"Grandpa, maybe you should start with toy guns," said the young clerk, and his friends chuckled. The old man just smiled. The young soldier by the door turned pale. He knew what had happened on the roof of Fallujah Hospital. Welcome to Unsung Valor Stories. Before we begin today's story, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from, and if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support us. The gun shop was nestled on the eastern edge of town, squeezed between a gas station and an old repair shop. Its windows were covered with semi-transparent film, the shelves inside filled with various weapons, and young salespeople behind the counter stared at their phones. Business wasn't busy, but it never was. This was a place where local men dropped by to talk about guns, sometimes made purchases, but mostly just hung around. The walls were lined with shotguns, pistols, and various military-style weapons. Behind the counter, more valuable models were displayed in locked glass compartments. Fluorescent lights hanging from the ceiling reflected off metallic surfaces, casting a pale glow on the American flag hanging on the wall. At exactly 10:15, the door chimed and a man entered. His appearance wasn't remarkable. Blue jeans, a brown shirt, a worn but clean jacket. His hair was silver, his graying beard neatly trimmed. His most notable features were a slight limp in his walk and a subtle tremor in his hands. James Turner, 67, was known around town as a retired mailman, or so they thought. Turner's eyes scanned the shop as soon as he entered. This wasn't a conscious movement, it was a habit formed over years. Doors, windows, potential threat points, exit routes, he assessed them all within seconds. No one noticed. No one saw that as he entered. He also checked the hands of everyone in the store. He approached the counter, smiled, and in a warm voice said, "Good morning, boys. Do you happen to have an M40A3 sniper rifle?" One of the young men behind the counter, Tyler, in his early 20s, put down his phone and looked up. Tyler was tall, athletic, with sharp features. He was a college student, working here only part-time. He knew about guns but had no real shooting experience. "Yes, we do, but it's quite heavy and sensitive." "What do you have in mind?" he asked, looking the old man up and down. Turner replied in a calm voice, "Just want to take a look. Haven't held one in years." His voice was soft, but his tone was authoritative. No one noticed, but to someone with military background, that tone carried rank and experience. Josh, standing next to Tyler, smiled and exchanged a glance with his friend. Josh was a bit shorter than Tyler. He had red hair and a freckled face. He was 19, and his knowledge about guns came mostly from video games. "Sure, I'll get it right away," he said with a slightly mocking tone. Josh entered the back room with a glass door. He unlocked a cabinet with a set of keys, carefully removed the M40A3 sniper rifle. He returned, being careful not to drop the weapon, checked its safety, and placed it on the counter. "Here you go, Mr. Turner, but be careful, it's quite heavy," he said, winking at his friend. Turner extended his hands and grasped the rifle. His hands trembled slightly, making it difficult to balance the weapon properly. Without touching the trigger, he was just trying to feel its weight. His fingers remembered the days when he had held an identical rifle for 3 days without ever putting it down. Since those days, his hands had never worked properly. As he held the rifle, memories flashed in his mind. The hardness of roof tiles, days of rain, the sound of the radio in his ear, screams and moans from below, and silence. A long, sharp silence. That void after each shot. Tyler raised his eyebrows, giving his friend a meaningful look. "Maybe it's a bit too heavy for you, sir?" Josh laughed. "Grandpa, maybe you should start with toy guns. These are for real men." Turner smiled kindly, not appearing offended at all. "Maybe you're right, son." He had encountered situations like this before. He knew the arrogance of young people, their dismissive attitude toward the elderly. He didn't care. After everything he had seen and experienced in life, the thoughtless words of a young man meant nothing. Just then, the door opened again, and 3 people entered. A woman and 2 men, all in their 30s, dressed in civilian clothes but with military posture. The woman, Captain Sarah Reynolds, from the Marine Intelligence Unit. One of the men, the tall one, Lieutenant Michael Carson, and the other, Sergeant David Martinez. All three were in civilian clothes, but each wore a small Marine Corps badge on their collar. Reynolds stood by the door, scanning the shelves as if looking for something. Carson approached the counter and noticed Turner at that moment. Carson froze the instant he saw Turner. This was a face he had only seen before in photographs and old military files. The face of a legend. The face of the man who single-handedly defended a hospital during the Fallujah operation, whose name was even encrypted in the files. The young man suddenly stopped. All color drained from his face. He stared at Turner with an expression of complete shock, as if he had seen a ghost. Tyler noticed this. "Can I help you, sir?" But Carson didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on Turner. Slowly, he took a step forward. "Captain Turner?" James Turner. The atmosphere in the store suddenly changed. Turner looked at the young man, smiled slightly. "Have we met, son?" Carson said. "I'm Lieutenant Carson, sir." "Mike Carson. I never forgot your face. From Fallujah." This name made the atmosphere in the store even heavier. Tyler and Josh looked at each other in astonishment. "Fallujah?" Carson nodded, still looking at Turner. "Central Hospital, 2004. I was there, sir. You were on the roof." Turner slowly placed the rifle back on the counter, tucking his trembling hands into his jacket pockets. "It's been a long time, Lieutenant." Carson was still in shock. 72 hours, sir. You stayed in one position for 72 hours, without moving." Everyone in the store was now listening intently. Josh wasn't laughing anymore. Tyler bit his lip, stepping out from behind the counter to listen more closely. Carson said, "If it weren't for you, no one in that hospital would have survived," his voice trembling. I was one of the patients there." Turner shook his head slightly. "I was just doing my job, son." Carson turned to his two companions, who had now joined him. "This is Captain James Turner, Sniper Unit, 3rd Special Forces. He single-handedly defended a hospital in Fallujah." Turner appeared slightly uncomfortable with this introduction, lowering his gaze. He had never sought praise. Carson continued. "For 72 hours, he stayed on the roof, in a single position, without moving. He neutralized all approaching threats. He saved 37 wounded soldiers and 142 civilians." Tyler and Josh's expressions had completely changed. Now they looked on with respect and astonishment. The man they had mocked was a war hero. Carson continued, "This man is known as the Ghost of Fallujah. Enemy forces could never locate him. When reinforcements finally reached the hospital after 72 hours, we didn't even know Captain Turner's position. We only heard the single shots coming from the roof, each hitting an enemy." Martinez now joined the conversation. "Your name wasn't even in the files, sir. You were only referred to as the Ghost. I first saw your photo 5 years ago in a special briefing." Turner listened calmly. Then he raised his hand and said to Carson, "Lieutenant, these stories are in the past." "Now I'm just an old man." Carson said, "No, sir. You're still a legend. And that tremor in your hands, we all know what it means." Josh asked, "What tremor?" His voice now completely changed. He felt ashamed for having mocked the old man earlier. Carson said, "Staying in the same position, without moving, for 72 hours causes permanent damage to muscle tissue. That's what causes the tremor. It's not a weakness, it's a metal." Reynolds quietly stepped forward. "Captain Turner's left leg was hit by 2 bullets during the operation. He refused the evacuation offered to him. There were still soldiers and civilians in the hospital who needed protection." Turner smiled slightly. "I haven't told this to anyone in a long time." Tyler completely emerged from behind the counter, approaching Turner with shame. "Mr. Turner, I apologize. I didn't know." Turner gently raised his hand. "No need to apologize, son. How could you have known?" The silence in the store deepened. Even the radio behind the counter had strangely lowered its volume, as if it too were listening. Carson pulled something from his pocket, a medallion, a small silver sniper emblem. "I've always carried this with me, sir. You gave it to me when I was evacuated from the hospital. You said, 'One day you'll give this back to me.'" Turner looked at the medallion, smiled slightly. "I remember." In his memory, that day came alive. The last wounded being evacuated from the hospital, Carson among them. A young, very young soldier, severely wounded. Turner, having descended from the roof for the last time, gave Carson this medallion and whispered, "Live, and one day give this back to me." Carson said, "I can never repay my debt to you, sir." Turner shook his head. "You don't owe me anything, son. I was there for young men and women like you." Reynolds broke the silence. "We've been looking for you, sir. You disappeared after the operation. Your name was erased from the files. Some even thought you weren't alive anymore." Turner shrugged slightly. "That's how it had to be. That operation, it wasn't in the official records. Neither was I." Tyler asked curiously, "So, were you really a ghost?" Turner laughed softly for the first time. "No, son. Just a soldier doing his job. Stories get exaggerated over time." But Carson objected. "No, sir. They weren't exaggerated. I was there. When you went up to the roof, the temperature was 120 degrees Fahrenheit. No water, no food. And you didn't leave your position for 72 hours. You stopped every attacker, every single one." Martinez added, "You neutralized 58 enemies surrounding the hospital, all by yourself." Turner looked uncomfortable. He had never counted the numbers. He had never boasted. "I just protected the hospital. The doctors inside were the real heroes." Reynolds said, "And all those doctors survived, thanks to you." Everyone in the store was silent. Tyler and Josh now understood who the man they had mocked really was. Turner picked up the rifle again, his hands trembling less now. "This M40A3 is the same model as my rifle in Fallujah. A good weapon, reliable." He gently stroked the barrel, then slowly placed it back on the counter. "What you did with that rifle that day, it wasn't fully described even in the file," said Carson. Turner nodded slightly. "Some things aren't told, son. They're just done and forgotten." Josh, gathering some courage, asked, "What about the tremors? Are they really from staying in position?" Turner looked at his hands. "Partly, plus 2 bullet wounds, one in my shoulder, one in my leg. They healed, but the nerves never fully recovered." Tyler said, "We're so sorry for mocking someone like you," in a genuinely ashamed tone. Turner gently raised his hand. "The world turns with young people mocking old people, son. That's normal. What matters is being there for each other when it counts." Carson asked, "Sir, would you like to have coffee with us? Our team is here. They would like to hear your story." Turner thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, son, but not my story. Our story." Carson extended the medallion to Turner. "I want to give this back to you, sir. I'm keeping my promise." Turner gently took the medallion, held it in his palm for a moment, then shook his head and gave it back to Carson. "No, son, you keep it. Maybe one day you'll give it to someone else, and they'll live and give it back to you." Reynolds asked, "Captain Turner, there are many people who want to talk to you, especially the people you saved from that hospital. Would you allow us to organize a reunion?" Turner hesitated for a moment. He had lived in silence for years. Even his neighbors didn't know who he was. A retired mailman, a quiet neighbor, an old man playing chess in the park. Now suddenly his past had returned. "Maybe," he finally said, "but nothing big. Just among old friends." As they were leaving the store, Tyler quickly intervened. "Mr. Turner, wait. Don't you want to buy the M40A3? Turner turned, smiled. "Maybe another time, son. Some things are best left behind." Tyler thought for a moment, then pulled out a small box from under the counter. Inside was a small polished pistol. "Then accept this as our gift. It's an honor to have met a hero like you." Turner looked at the pistol, then at Tyler. "You're very kind, son. But weapons aren't my business anymore. I'm now just—" "A hero," Josh completed, "and we're honored to have met you." Turner smiled slightly, nodded, and followed Carson and his friends out of the store. Tyler and Josh watched from the store's door as Turner walked away with Carson and his team. Josh whispered, "We just mocked a legend, didn't we?" Tyler nodded. "Yes, and he didn't say a thing. He just smiled." "That's how men like him always are," said another voice. Turning around, they saw another customer watching them, an elderly man, perhaps even older than Turner. It was clear he was an old soldier. They never tell their own stories. Others tell them. The elderly customer said, "I know Turner." from Vietnam. He was the same back then. Never talked, just did his job. Saved us, then disappeared. Even after 40 years, he's still the same. Tyler asked, "Were you a veteran too?" The old man smiled slightly. "We're all something, son. Some of us just carry our burdens more quietly." Then he too walked out. Carson, Reynolds, and Martinez took Turner to a small cafe in the center of town. When they entered, a few people looked at them, but no one recognized them. Turner had been here before, but always alone, always quiet. Today, the four of them sat at a table and ordered coffee. Carson asked, "Can you tell us your story, sir?" "What happened after Fallujah?" Turner stirred his coffee. "There's nothing to tell, son. The operation was completed. I retired. Now I live here." Reynolds asked, "But why? Why did you refuse all those medals, all those honors? Why did you disappear?" Turner remained silent for a long time. Then, "Because I don't want to remember what happened there," he said. "Those 3 days were the longest 3 days of my life, and I relived them every night, every shot, every scream, every silence." Everyone at the table fell silent. Turner continued, "Medals and honors are not a reward for what you've done. Real life doesn't work that way. A real hero is someone who never thinks they're a hero." Carson, Reynolds, and Martinez listened respectfully. Turner slowly smiled. "But today I'm glad to see you, Carson. Seeing that you lived, that's worth more than all the medals." That day, the four of them talked for hours. Turner talked more than he had in years. Carson explained how he had rebuilt his life. Reynolds and Martinez shared their own stories. And around the table, an invisible bond formed, the bond of war and sacrifice. When evening came, Turner returned home. It was a small, modest house. The garden was well maintained, the fence freshly painted. Inside, there were no medals, no military photographs on the living room wall. Just family photos. Turner in his youth, his wife, his children. And a small box sitting on the table. Inside, an unused sniper emblem. After that day, something changed in the small gun shop in town. A photograph was hung behind the counter on the wall. A hazy image of a hospital roof in Fallujah, with a simple inscription beside it. "Sometimes the strongest hands are the ones that tremble the most." And whenever an old man enters the shop now, Tyler and Josh look twice, because they now know that sometimes the most ordinary-looking people have the most extraordinary stories. Months later, a small ceremony was held in town, on Veterans Day in the local park. Turner wasn't there. He had declined to attend. But in his place were dozens of people, soldiers and civilians rescued from that hospital in Fallujah. The once young soldiers who were now middle-aged, Carson, Reynolds, Martinez, and others. And in the center of the park, a small monument was erected. It bore no name, just a simple inscription, "For the Ghost of Fallujah. He was there. We are here." That night, Turner sat on his porch, thinking about the distant ceremony. There was a knock at his door. When he opened it, Tyler stood there, holding a small package. "Mr. Turner," said Tyler, "I brought you something." Turner opened the package. Inside was a miniature model of the M40A3 sniper rifle. Beneath it, a plaque. "No hero is forgotten if their story is told." Turner looked at the model, then at Tyler. "Thank you, son." Tyler said, "I took over the shop. My father retired. And I tell your story to everyone, because it shouldn't be forgotten." Turner nodded. "Remembering is good, but most important is learning." "And what have you learned, son?" Tyler thought for a moment. "Real heroes are the quietest ones." Turner smiled. "That's right. Now go and create your own story, and maybe someday someone will tell a story about you." What about you? Have you ever met someone like this? Have you ever noticed heroism carried silently? Share in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this. Until our next story, remember to look twice at those around you, because you never know. That ordinary-looking person next to you might actually be a legend.